Hello and welcome. In this footage that I'm doing a voiceover for, this is the last footage without sound, luckily, arriving at the end of this, and then I can finally continue with the building. But in this footage, I ask some general questions to ChatGPT about some general principles, etc., etc. So let's go. So here I typed in ChatGPT, and still I'm using ChatGPT4. I ask it, can you give me an overview of the differences between creating an instance of an object of another class with a field to get access to its values and methods compared to using get and set methods to have access to those functionalities? And that's pretty funny. I was in my last video and some videos before, maybe also even maybe, I was asking myself this same question, amongst other questions, of course. And I, of course, forgot that I already asked these kinds of questions. But this, like I said before, I learned a lot between recording those videos and now, and also in the reviewing process, in the voiceover process. And yeah, apparently I also already asked some general principle things, and I probably asked some stuff, definitely asked some stuff that I didn't record. Not very much though, because I want most of my progress to be recorded, to be part of the project. I think it's more fun if anybody is interested in it to see what I'm learning, etc. I think the contrast of my struggle and then learning a thing and understanding it better. For me, at least, I think that's fun, and so I try not to work ahead or do all kinds of things off camera, because I think that would be a bit of a shame, and then feel obliged to afterwards explain what I learned, etc. And yeah, like I said in the other videos, I talk about these kinds of concepts, and I forgot I already had footage about it because I worked way too far ahead with those videos. But like I said, now I'm almost at the end, and then I can continue. Like I said in the last video, then I will next video that I make, I will try to implement some of the things I learned, clean up my code a bit, try to make it more in line with the principles I understand now, etc. But I'm running my mouth. Let's see how this goes. Like I said, so I'm asking ChatGPT about the difference between creating an instance of an object with a field, etc., and compared to using get and set methods. So of course it says certainly, when working with object-oriented programming, there are different ways to access the values and methods of another class. Two common approaches are creating an instance of an object with a field or using getter and setter methods. Here's an overview of the differences between these two approaches. Creating an instance with a field. When you create an instance of an object of another class, you directly access its field and methods. So I zoomed in a bit. It will be hard to read all this when you don't have it on a big screen, but it's a bit more zoomed in. I'll start from the top. So yeah, two common approaches are creating an instance of an object with a field or using getter and setter methods. Here's an overview of the difference between creating an instance with a field. When you create an instance of an object of another class, you directly access its fields and methods. This is done by instantiating the class and then accessing its public members, fields and methods. This approach can be simple and straightforward, but it can also lead to potential issues like exposing internal implementation details and violating encapsulation principles. The pros are easy to understand and implement, and direct access to field and methods. The cons can expose internal implementation details, which can lead to security and maintenance issues, also potential changing certain values, etc. Violates encapsulation principles as it allows external access to an object's internal state. Yeah, and like I think I was last video, I was wondering, how do I access the right instance also when I only want one instance, like the whole board class with the arrays, etc. I don't want to access the wrong thingy, or even with the game loop or things that only need one instance of that class. And using getter and setter methods, let's continue the video. Getter and setter methods, also known as accessors and mutators, are used to access and modify the values of an object's private fields indirectly. By using these methods, you can control how the data is accessed or modified, providing a layer of abstraction between the internal implementation and external access. Yes. This approach adheres to the encapsulation principles, ensuring that an object's internal state is not directly exposed. The pros are encourages encapsulation by hiding internal implementation details from one class to the other, provides a layer of abstraction, making it easier to change the internal implementation without infecting external code. Yes. Allows validation and additional logic to be implemented when getting or setting. Yes. Requires more code to implement it is in con and can be less intuitive for new programmers. Well, that was the case for me. I was using a weird kind of way of what for me felt intuitive is more of a cascading way of implementing stuff. So for me, at least, it was less intuitive, but I'm slowly getting the idea of it. In summary, using getter and setter methods is generally considered a better practice, as it enforces encapsulation and provides a layer of abstraction. However, creating an instance with a field might be useful in certain situations where simplicity is preferred, simplicity, or when working with simple data structures with little to no additional logic. So, I think it depends on what you're doing. I think there's sometimes also maybe even more than it explains here, a sort of logic to it that I'm slowly starting to see for myself for my own project. So I ask a next question, thanks, and can you give some explanation about the implications of giving arguments to classes and alternative ways of getting similar results? All this is in Java, by the way. Here I'm talking about passing arguments between the brackets when you, not even sure of that, I think that's called arguments, but when you pass arguments to a class, you're essentially passing values to its constructor method. And values that you have to use. These values are used, before it goes off the page. These values are used to initialize the object's fields and set its initial state. There are several implications and alternative ways of achieving similar results. Let's discuss them below. So, constructor arguments. When passing arguments to a class, you use constructors to initialize the object's fields. This is a common and straightforward way to create and set up objects. The pros are it ensures that the object is in a valid state when it's created. Yes, that is in the case that already explained me once that you want that specific field or class or something, you always want that to be implemented when you create an instance of that class where you pass the arguments to. Allows for different ways to create objects with different initial states using constructor overloading. Okay, that's something I don't know about. Constructor overloading. And the cons are it can lead to a large number of constructors if there are many combinations of fields to initialize. I already saw another example. It had pretty simple about that, wherein it explained that you can use a few that are like when you have a person database that you use a few that are, what is the word in English? Obligatoire and interdit. It's forbidden or it's alles dat niet verboden is verplicht. I can't find a word. Now, even with Google Translate, I can't find the right word. It's obliged, but it's not in this context the word I'm looking for. So I don't even remember what I was saying. That ensures that the object is in a valid state when it's created. I was talking about the difference, that you have certain fields, certain values, certain fields that you have to use, and others that are optional. It's so frustrating, I can't find the right term. Anyway, not important. And it can be difficult, that's one of the cons, to understand the purpose of each constructor when there are many overloaded constructed. So yeah, not sure if I ask about what overloaded means. Then it goes into setter methods. Instead of using constructor arguments, you can use setter methods to set the value of fields after the object is created. This can provide more flexibility after the object. This can provide more flexibility in setting up an object that may not guarantee that the object is always in a valid state. The pros are provides flexibility in setting up objects and can simplify object creation by reducing the numbers of constructors needed. The cons are may not guarantee that objects is in a valid state when it's created and can result in objects with partially initialized fields, which could lead to bugs. Builder padding. Oh yeah, I read about it. The builder padding is an alternative way to create objects, particularly when there are many optional fields or when the object creation process is complex. The builder pattern separates the construction process from the object. Okay, the builder pattern. The builder pattern separates the construction process from the object representation, making it easier to manage complex object creation scenarios. The pros are it allows for more readable and maintainable code when dealing with complex object creation. It provides a clear separation of concerns between object instruction and object representation. Allows for optional and default fields values without requiring a large number of overloaded constructors. And the cons are requires additional code to implement the builder class. Can be overkill for simple object creation scenarios. I think mostly for me that's pretty overkill. I like the principle as far as I understand it. In summary, passing arguments to constructors is a common way to initialize objects in Java, but it may not be the best choice for every situation. Depending on the complexity of the object creation process and the number of optional fields, using setter methods or the building pattern might be more suitable alternative. Right, so yeah, and all this brings me to, because in this video, this is pretty much what I do. I ask a few more things, I think. And this brings me to something I thought it was a nice opportunity to talk about in this video, because I'm asking only general things here. That's something I read the other day on Reddit. I'm following, what is it called, that group, ChatGPT coding or something. I follow a few groups about ChatGPT on Reddit and another place. I follow pretty much the discussion around the GPT and everything, the new technology, the dangers, and all that kind of stuff that's, of course, being talked about a lot at the moment. But that specific post was about something that you see more often as well. It was the question. It was a little meme about learn to code or learn to prompt. Learn to prompt ChatGPT. Yeah, I find it an interesting discussion. And yeah, some people say that you need to know, you need to know, you need to be a programmer. You need to know how to code for ChatGPT and its coding. We're specifically talking about programming here. That you need to use it effectively. You need to learn. You need to know how to program already to see what when it's talking nonsense. Firstly, and also to know what to ask. And there were some people, and I replied as well, that said, yeah, but you can, why not do both? Huh? In the sense of learn to code and learn to prompt. And what I'm doing at the moment is really, I had a little knowledge. I knew a little bit about coding. When I started out, I already have some code, and I learned that online from reading guides and really beginner stuff and browsing through a few programming books, specifically C++, but more about principles of object-oriented programming. Seeing what I have produced so far didn't help much, but at least I knew a little bit. So when I started this out, I knew a little bit. But then again, I think that, yeah, in fact, ChatGPT is ideal to learn it even when you don't know anything about it. Because in the last video I asked about the how to use the debugger in Eclipse in this specific IDE. You can go as far back if you really know nothing about programming at all. You can start by asking ChatGPT, okay, I want to create a game like I'm doing. What do I need to? You can literally start to ask it what you need to install on your computer to do that, and it will talk about an IDE, the software for people that really don't know anything about it, the software that you use to program in, to create your code in, and to what is it called? I forgot the word when you export your code. Um, it will talk about that. You can even ask it what would be the best IDE for your purpose, and you can ask it how to set it up, because it amazingly knows a lot um, about a lot of computer programs. At a certain point, I even ask it about some big website, how to do things on there. It knows those things, or knows. It's trained on so much data and text on the internet that it knows, might even know stuff about obscure websites and how they function, etc. How to set up a profile on a certain website and whatever. So um, it won't, of course, know everything, and it isn't up to date, always up to date. But if you start out with just general questions like how do I set that up? What program I want to create this or that? What programming language should I use? And it won't tell you what to do, but it will give, like I'm doing here, it can give you an overview of the pros and cons of different things. And you can, what I love about it is you can go, it tells you something and you don't understand what it is. Like here it's talking about overloading, etc., but also way more general. Like if you ask what do I have to do to start to learn programming to create a game, it starts about talking about an IDE, and then you ask it what is an IDE, etc., etc., and you can go layer after layer after layer of. You don't have to know anything. You just start with a very generalized question, and you just ask more and more about the things that you don't understand, and it will, if you have any capacity for learning, you will learn step by step by step everything you need to learn. It's perfect for that. So, and of course, like people programmers that say, yeah, but you need to know a minimum of programming to know whether the output it gives is any use, or is or whether it is hallucinating or not, etc. That's true. That's true when you ask it to write some code for you. And but I'm asking very basic, oftentimes very stupid questions, and then it just like there, it just gives text about basic principles, and there it's a text generator basically. So it can, what it's really good at is all the info that's written on the internet about that to make a resume of that and give you overviews like this. That's really where it excels. And it might get some details wrong, etc. But it's like the discussion about whether it's biased or whether it's able to tell the truth, etc. I did a little video about that, but I also without sound, and it wasn't scripted, so I might do a new video about that someday. But what it can do very excellently is, um, because it's like a predictive model, so it's trained on a huge amount of text and on the internet and from elsewhere. It is very strong in giving the most common um, the most common information. And it is also capable, I saw that, which is pretty amazing, to give the most common detractors of that information, or what it contradicts. And that's I think that's already pretty amazing. So if we're talking about opinions, it can give the most common, like the public, what is it called, public opinion, and it can give info about what it contradicts. It's like a Wikipedia. Like it, well, we can have a discussion about whether that's biased or not. But in the best case, it's most common knowledge united, and ChatGPT is very great in that. And when we return to programming, like giving general info, like here, it's very good in making a summary of what is commonly known in the field, and it can go into all kinds of details. And when you start to asking it code, yeah, then it can apparently hallucinate things. I already saw that it inverses the order of things sometimes. I had a case in inheritance that it just used the wrong terms, so that the hierarchy of stuff wasn't right. Um, and of course, when I ask all kinds of code even I ask it to give me examples of code when I give it one or a few classes, or I give it a code snippet, it can get all kinds. It can give me all kinds of code that doesn't fit with the rest of my code, and that's logical. And that's that I think there's. I'm in no way a pro in using ChatGPT to have a bigger context. For example, I have I have a list of conversations, and I try to use a conversation where it already has a lot of my code so that it can read back the code that I gave it before. But I think there is like a limited attention span. How do you say it? A little limited context for that. I don't even know exactly how and where, etc. But there's a certain limit to that. But I'm such an amateur with that I don't even know exactly where it is. But yeah, so it can give me code that isn't very helpful, etc. But yeah, then I have to make sure that I understand. So that's a learning process. And when I do that a lot of times, I'm like, yeah, this you can it tells me all kinds of stuff that I don't understand, and I've or I understand it a bit, and I think that's not useful. That's not what I need, and I then just feed it my code that relates to that specific subject, and then it adapts its code to the code I already have. So that's great. So and to add to that, when you start yeah, from knowing nothing, and you ask ChatGPT how to start all that, what software, etc., and then you start to write for let's keep the example of a game. You ask it how to start. How to really you want a certain kind of game, you explain it, and then you ask it to give some code to start off. It will give you some classes, a main class, etc., etc. And then yeah, like I read sometimes people say, yeah, but you even if the code works, even if it works, it might not work for what you want to do later on. It might not be scalable, it might not be this, might not be that, it might not respect certain design principles, etc. But yeah, my response would be there to that I'm working into the same kinds of problems. Um, while you're developing this piece of software, when you want to do things and the code that you have so far doesn't isn't adapted to that, you'll walk in that you run into that problem sooner or later, and yeah, you'll just have to learn. And in this case, you can use the help of ChatGPT, and you have to learn why it doesn't work, what you need to change, etc. Like a guy said, that was I thought it was pretty interesting, and you can do all this while working on a project that interests you, that's a passion of yours, and instead of just having some kind of practice program that's not very interesting, etc. And it's just a tryout thing, like I guess like the equivalent of a Hello World thingy, but more complex. So yeah, well, doing all this stuff, of course, I totally agree with people that say, yeah, when you just use it to for very specific user case to write some code for you, to copy that code, and it works, and you have no idea why it works or what it does. Um, yeah, that might cause some problems in the future. But um, yeah, those we're not talking about launching space shuttles or nuclear missiles in general, and you'll probably not use that for to create software for some big software project in an enterprise if you know nothing about all that. And yeah, that's a potential scenario where things could go very wrong, of course. Yeah, but that would just be that would be, just be stupid too. I mean, yeah, but that's with anything in life. You need like a minimum of conscientiousness to yeah to not implement stuff when you enough when you don't understand what you're doing. And yeah, I know a lot of cases when in our working life, etc. We the famous fake it until you make it, or the programmers that talk a lot about imposter syndrome. But that's not only for programmers. Yeah, I've been around a bit, and you have people. I think people that suffer imposter syndrome are more conscious of their capabilities and limitations than people that suffer the inverse, the Dunning-Kruger effect, for example, that think they know everything and actually they just know a method, but they don't know why that method works, or that there's alternatives that might work maybe in specific scenarios. I've seen that in my own life in gardening, landscaping, and in construction, for example. We worked with all kinds of different people, and yeah, you meet people that are very sure of what they know, and that is the way. And like I said, they don't know that there's other ways as well that might work, but depending on your budget, on the situation, the levels of perfection you want to accomplish, etc. Luckily, I also worked with other people that could explain that there are different methods for different situations, for the different outcomes that you want. And I think that's in any profession in life or any activity. It all depends. So yeah, I agree with people that yeah, you cannot just ask ChatGPT to make you some code for some very important piece of software where a lot of things depend on it, and you can mess up a whole lot and cause a whole lot of damage if you yourself don't know exactly what you're doing. And what I see, there's a lot of people who are that level of professional, and they can still use it to help them write some stuff quickly and save them a lot of time and effort to like I say a lot of the time write boilerplate stuff. And yeah, of course you have to understand what it's doing in that case. And of course there will be people that use it to take shortcuts or try to use it to take shortcuts, but that's like anything in life, like any tool that we use. So yeah, and when you're using it, really using it to learn, I think it does a really great job because you can go back and forth, etc. And you, of course, you will need to have the willingness to learn. And like I say, I let it give me all kinds of example code. Sometimes I copy a piece of code. Most of the time, I can't use it directly because it misses the context or it's not adapted. It doesn't use the right names, etc. That's the least thing. Um, yeah, but I take pieces over. It's just my way of learning, seeing what I have and seeing what it suggests and trying to understand how that works. And if I don't know how it works, or it doesn't work for me, or I think it doesn't work for me, I'll go back to it and ask it again, etc. And of course, I also use other resources as well. I not only use ChatGPT, but since I'm doing this, I'm depending a lot on it to give me all those kinds of general informations that otherwise I would search for on the net. Like I said, I go into Java docs sometimes to see a nice overview of the methods, etc. And yeah, but it just saves you a lot of searching and digging around, and it's it's so many things. It's a great starting point. It's a great when you want to go more in depth, etc. When you really want to check things from another source, you check things from another source. But that's just the process of learning, and of course, yeah, people that are motivated by taking shortcuts and getting to a result quickly, etc. Yeah, of course, You'll have people that try to use it like that, and they will probably at some point run into problems if they create stuff that they don't understand themselves. But like I said, mostly not important. If my game doesn't work, yeah, it doesn't work. If someday I finish it and I can market it and etc. and it's online and because it will be a game that can be played against other people and there's all kinds of bugs, all kinds of stuff. Um, because like I said, if you don't follow if you don't know all the general information around it, you don't know design principles, etc. Yeah, probably prone to making all kinds of mistakes. But yeah, you will be confronted with those along the way, and you can learn more about those. So yeah, yeah. My opinion is that like the way I use it, I'm using. I mean, when they're talking about learn to prompt, yeah, then you're learning powerful ways of using the ChatGPT interface to get pretty specific results and quickly and efficiently. And I'm really using it to learn to code and to accelerate my process because even if it gives me example code that I cannot use copy paste because it doesn't connect to the other code I have, it doesn't take into account the other code I have. If it gives me some example code for a certain thing, I'm it's very easy for me. Oh, okay, it's just like that, and a lot of the time it's way more easy than I was thinking, and I can then adapt that code to fit with the code I already have. So for me, yeah, I thought that's interesting um, to talk about a bit. I'm very much learning all this with its help, and I'm definitely not a power user. I definitely don't. I see people that there's apparently there's a coding assistant, but as far as I understand, it's for Python only. But there seem to be code assistants that you can use in IDEs and your the software you're using. There seem to be ways around that question for the context. I think there's already stuff going around that can see the whole context of your code. That can, I think it must be plugins for the IDE, so I'm not sure. So I think the argument that you need to already know how to code is isn't is maybe true when you want specific results from ChatGPT. If you really want it to write things for you, then might be true. But the way I'm using it with really asking very basic beginner questions and like this. And, oh yeah, that's what I want to say. What I really love is that what I'm doing here, asking very general questions that I couldn't ask if I hadn't learned with it as a tutor. I wouldn't be able to ask if I hadn't learned what I've learned already. So they're pretty basic questions, but still, it implies that I know there's different ways of doing things, so that now I can ask what the differences are and the pros and cons are, etc. And what I love about it, specifically, that you can do this and you can go into detail in anything it explains. For explain more about this, give me like here maybe I do that the builder pattern. Like what is that? That's the first time I hear about that. Overloading constructors, I don't know about that. And it goes in both ways. Like I can go give me an example now of this or that, and it will give me code. And then when there's something in the code and I'm like, "Oh, what's that about?" I can feed that code back to it and ask a more general question about that, and it goes into detail about that. Then I can ask a global question about that. It goes into very general information. Then I want a specific example of something in there. It goes directly into code. It goes without any problem, without having to read all kinds of resources and have books about coding principles and best practice, and have other books where you have all kinds of details. That's the great power of it. And the details it gives, the code it gives, is not just some what is called boilerplate example. It's specific to your code that you have if you want it to be. So yeah, I like this stuff. I could give it my code and tell it to give me an example of the encode of the different way. Show me side by side the different ways I could do this with these different ways of doing it. And yeah, I think that's pretty great. I think it's um, really amazing, a really amazing tool just to specifically to learn from nothing. Of course, it's more easy when you already know something, but that's always the case. And its usefulness for certain stuff will go up or go down according to your level of competence, of course. So, but yeah, and while doing all this about the prompting, I'll probably learn how to use it better and more effectively. But I, yeah, I didn't find any problems, hardly any problems with just talking to it in natural language. Most of the time, it understands perfectly what I ask it. Sometimes I need to express myself better, of course, but most of the time, even a lot of the time, it understands better what I try to say than I feel I I asked the question. So yeah, like I said, there's all kinds of other ways to use it to prompt it better, to use the API, um, to use other plugins, etc. There's definitely better ways. So and all the things I see about prompt engineering, etc. I think there's something to it. Maybe it's a bit um, overestimated. What is the correct way of saying that? But because yeah, the power specifically of ChatGPT is that it understands natural language. That's just a great thing. If you can make a half decent sentence to express what you want to express, yeah, then it's crazy. If you yeah maybe if you don't have that capability, then you might have a problem. I don't know, but still, I'm saying all this like it's already been settled that you that yeah I can create a game with a functioning game with ChatGPT. But the whole theme of my series is to see exactly that if with the help of ChatGPT I can create a fully functional game, a playable game, and not only playable on my computer, but um, like the basic idea was a board game. And for the first iteration, I'll keep the idea that you play against another player, a human player, or multiple. So the goal is to get to a point where it's not only a finished game, but it's also playable for other people. So it still has to be seen if I get there with the help of ChatGPT. It's people who know something about it, without a doubt, know that it's not only creating the game, but it's then I have to learn a whole lot of things about yeah the whole networking thing, the whole yeah everything everything that comes with publishing a game, in fact, and making it work online, etc. So yeah, that's the whole purpose of this series. So before I answer my question already and say yeah that's ideal for exactly for learning, etc. Um, it's actually to be seen if this is enough to get to get to a finished product. And of course, I'm not going to limit myself to just using ChatGPT, but the idea is basically that with its help, I'm doing this alone with its help and uh, other resources. But then, yeah, then again, it can propose all kinds of other resources I need to get all the knowledge to actually make it work as a game that's available to play for others. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to find out. I'm going to find out if that actually works. So so yeah, that was my little TED talk about learning to code or learning to prompt. I think personally, I think it's a great tool for learning. it's a great tutor. Of course, it has its limitations still, etc. Um, by the way, since GPT-4, I think the code it gives me is way more precise. I saw it's more slow when it writes code, but it's seems to be much more precise, concise even maybe. Not sure about these kinds of thing of general information, whether that has changed much. I'm not really conscient of a big change on that side. But okay, so yeah, I felt like ranting about that for a bit. So there's that. So let's go on with the footage. And I'm asking all that because here on the on the left side in my grid hexagon, I have this culture and corridor tile argument passed to the grid hexagon, and since the beginning I'm not sure about that way of doing it, especially since right away I create a grid without a culture tile for the borders where I only want a corridor to enclose the culture tiles. And in the board creation, I also tell that's not a problem. I tell it to not create a grid hexagon entirely on on the point. But yeah, that's the reason. So I make it always have that. But yeah, I think I don't know. I'm still not sure. I can see the value now of doing it this way, but I think in this case I will just create a method for this actually, and a method that uses the random thingy. Yeah, I'm still doubting whether I do all that in the board class when I construct a board, or whether I do that here. One use scenario is that now I create random tiles every time I generate the board. Um, One other use scenario I could imagine is that I want a player to be able to create its own board, for example, or use a pre-designed board. So then when creating the board, I want another method, and not the random terrain generator thingy. But that doesn't change that every grid hexagon needs to have a culture and a corridor tile. But yeah, like I said, the most obvious thing here is that I already tell it that in certain circumstances it doesn't have a culture tile. So that's kind of, yeah, contradictory. So anyway, let's go on. Yeah, I zoomed in a bit. Here's a thing I find pretty weird as well. I need to find out more about that. This is my main class, main, and so I instantiate a new board, instantiate a new game loop, and instantiate a new user interface. But then with the other code, I think it was the last video with ChatGPT, we came to the thing that it passes an instance of this is main, game loop, and board into the interface to have access to those instances. But yeah, for me, this is like a weird loopy kind of thing. Maybe this is the way it's supposed to be, but this breaks my brain. Like main is, of course, that's where the game is run. Um, the game loop should be the game loop that is instantiated here in the board as well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is also kind of a thing. This has also the order of things are done, as far as I know. In this constructor, it's first the board, then the game loop, and then the user interface, which is a bit weird, by the way. But anyway, but for me, this is maybe this is okay, but for me, it's weird to maybe because I create maybe because I instantiate the user face here, that's it can take the other instances. But the weirdest thing for me is that in main, I instantiate the new user face, and then it has access to this instance of main again. where it is created. For me, that's the principle. The other two, okay. But that's, for me, that's pretty weird. Weird. Oh, and then I have start game loop down there. Weird also. So yeah, I'm not totally not sure about that. But that besides that, see what I was doing for the rest. Yeah, okay, so I don't seem to do anything else in this video. I was talking about lots of things, I guess, but I don't ask new questions to ChatGPT. I run the code here, and yeah, I'm still stuck, of course, where I was stuck the last time with placing the unit, etc., selecting the tile. So okay, that was this for this video, a short video, a bit of general information. Next video, I go implementing these kinds of things that I learned. Like I said, I want to do a sort of a cleanup, a sort of run over my code, and see what I can tidy up and throw away even. And then I'll continue with the placement of the unit. So thanks again for watching, and see you guys later. Bye bye.